This week, we are going to play around with some of the geometry that we learned last few weeks in Chapter 11. The first part of the assignment is to do a 2D graphic design, and the second part will be a 3D graphic design. For the 2D graphic design, we're going to do some computer design. So I have some images up here, a picture of my cat, Morwenna, when she was little, versus a graphic image of a cat drawn on a computer, graphic image of a tiger drawn on a computer, and a map of kind of like a mind map thing, again, done on a computer. Graphical images like the last three here are generally done in a graphical programming language called SVG. It's not really a programming language, it's just the language images are built in so that they can be blown up or shrunk down and still look good. Whereas if you try to blow up or shrink a photo, then it pixelates and doesn't look quite right. But scalable vector graphics, SVG images, are mathematical curves and shrink and reduce and always look clean and crisp. I have examples set up in a system online called CodePen, so you have to make a free CodePen account to do this. And then I have sample CodePen activities for you to play with for each part here. And the last one, you'll design your own. And so I'll give an example of me designing a new one there shortly. So I'll do this in 4 parts. So first, go over to CodePen and sign up for a free account. Once you have a free account in CodePen, then you can grab one of my files here, and if you click on it, when you first go to it, it will say something like here, it says starting example 1, and at the top address it says Coach Parker, that's me, made this. And for you to make this your own, you're going to have to fork it. Now, fork just means make a copy. And so down on the bottom right, once you're logged in as you in CodePen, then you can choose fork. So again, notice right now, this is Coach Parker, and the code for this pen is blah, 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 right? QEBV, QBR. And when I choose fork, what's going to happen is it's going to make a copy of it for this account that I'm in. So I have another CodePen account that's called Gary Parker. So whatever when you made your free CodePen account, it'll have whatever your account name is there, and it'll have a new code for your pen. And the pen is whatever you design down here. Now we're doing our SVG designs in the HTML panel here. We're not going to use the CSS panel, so I can slide that over, give myself some more room, and this is adjustable. And you can either look at the top bottom view like that, or you can change the view to be, say, a side view, where you can have the code on the side and view what happens on the right. So either way, it depends on the computer screen I'm working with. Sometimes I like one better than the other. So let's see, I'll try this one for now. So you should see some similarities to the HTML panel up here and what we see below. So here I have these this H1 SVG basics, and notice down here it says SVG basics, and then it says exercise 1 here and exercise 1 here. So everything up here is coded in HTML and displays down here. And HTML is the language of web pages mostly. SVG is a language for graphic design. And so here, the file has to start off with a similar SVG. It's called a tag. And some things have to be in there for the computer to know how to draw it properly. So you have to declare what version of SVG that you're using. There's 2 parts that do that. And you should always give it a width, a height, and a view box. And I'll talk more about those later. For now, just go with what I have. If something is grayed out like this, it's a comment. So this comment says the optional background color is given below here in this rect element. Notice it starts with rect, and that's giving me this blue outline with the figure there. So for example, if I change the blue to red, then we should see the outline of the shape below change to red. Back to the way it was. All right, so I just want to play around with a couple of things there for a moment. Let's go to a place where I can draw on it. So this is a similar but different example. This one right here is given on this getting started guide here. So that'll open up a Google Doc. And this might be something you want to print out. because you're going to do some designs on a fresh grid like this, where X goes from 0 to 160 horizontally and Y goes from 0 to 100 vertically. Notice it goes 0 to 100 down. A little different than the way you graph in an algebra class, but that's the way computer graphics work. All right, so back here, so slightly different image than the other one, but same idea. Notice that I have this SVG at the top, I have a width and a height, I have a view box, and I have a declaration here that this is an SVG file. And the browser and programs that view SVG on your computer need that to verify what kind of image it's drawing. And then after that, you say what you want to build. So I could build a rectangle, and a rectangle has an X and a Y, which is the starting corner down here, and then a width and a height. So from the point 10, 10, the computer is going to draw a rectangle that goes 80 units across. So if I start at 10 and I head over 80, that should put me here between 80 and 100, which is 90, and the height is 100. So starting at 10 for Y here, it has a height of 90, a height of 80, which ends over here at 90. Okay. And here I said to fill it with the color lime. I said the stroke width, so that's the thickness of the pen that's drawing the outline of it. I set it to 2, and then I told the color to draw the outline of the rectangle. That's called the stroke. I said that's gray. Check out the circle element here. So circle has a center X value and a center Y value. And remember, we learned about circles. Circle is an object where all the points on the edge are the same distance from a center. So this says start with a center of 50, 50. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and come down here to 50. So the center of the circle should be right there. And then the edge of the circle is a radius of 35. So from that, I would count out 10, 20, 35 puts me that way. 10, 20, 35. And so the circle is the edge, all points 35 pixels away from the center point 50, 50. In this case, I said to fill it with orange, but notice I didn't mention stroke, so there is no border drawn in on the circle. Okay, so you don't have to have a stroke. You also don't have to have a fill. Other thing I did here was the polyline. Let's highlight that in blue maybe. And the polyline has a bunch of points. So notice here is a comma separated point and another comma separated point. So there are 4 points there. The first point is 1560. So X equals 15 would be about here. Y equals 60. So there's my starting point right there. And then the next point is 1585. So stay at X equals 15, but jump down here to 85. And so then it just connects those 2 points, right? Because it's called a polyline. And notice I have other points, 85, 85 and 85, 20 right there. And then it just traces that out for you in the order that the points appear. So if you stated the points in a different order, you would get a slightly different shape. There's also an element called a line. And a line has a starting X and Y value, X1, Y1. You might remember that from an algebra class, and X2, Y2. So that one says start at the point 2020 and end at the point 85, 85. So those are all the elements of the SVG here. So I want you to do something kind of sort of similar. So let's go look back at that other example I had on the codepen. So in the codepen here, I have the rectangle that outlines the space we get to draw in here. And then I have a circle, and the circle is going, now again, there's no grid here to see. I drew the grid in the other one just to kind of see what was going on. The center X value is 110, the center Y value is 50. So this one right here, the bounding box sort of goes from 0 to 160. So if that's 0 over here on the left and 160 is over there, then 110's around here. And then the box is 100 tall, and so I put the center of the circle in the middle. So that would be 50. So around here is the center, about where the corner of that rectangle that contains the word bruh. I drew another rectangle. Notice it says rect. That one starts at 1050. So that would be this point over here, upper right corner of the rectangle. And then I made it 100 wide and 40 tall. Now there's another way you can draw polygons like rectangles and triangles, and that's with the polygon element. And the polygon element just takes a bunch of points. So notice here you can see I have, oops, wrong button. I have 1, 2, and then 3 points here. And the Z means go back to where you started, which closes the figure. So let's think about that for a moment. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this here. And then a screenshot of the code so I can draw on it. Let's put it on a new page here. All right, so there is my image. And then let's take a look at the code I have here. And let's focus on the last few things here. All right, so think about the polygon here. So this says start at the point 10, 40. So x equals 10 is about here, y equals 40 would be about here. So that would be that point right there. Let's pick a different highlighter right there. And then next go over to the point 110, 40. So 110 for x is going to be somewhere over here, 40 is there, so that would be this point. And so the computer, when it reads this line, starts here and then draws a line over to the second point. And then the third point, 40, 10, that's about x equals 40 and y equals 10 there, puts me right here. So then it traces over to there. So at this point in the code, I made that point, and that point, and the Z says go back to wherever you started, which closes the figure and makes that closed triangular polygon. And if I had a fourth point in there, then I could have made a rectangle or a quadrilateral or a parallelogram or a trapezoid. I could make a pentagon or a hexagon. And I'll play with one of those later. So polygon's a nice, powerful tool for drawing stuff. You can put text anywhere in the SVG. And here I have text at the point 60, 80. So let's see, that was about 40. So 60 would probably be about right here. And 80 would be, let's see, that's 0 to 100. 80 is going to be around here-ish. And so that point right there, I think, is about 60, 80. I picked a font size of 30. I'm filling the font with blue. Notice I have a text anchor in the middle, so that means the center here is the center X value of 60, and the text spreads equally left and right from there. And then I picked a stroke width of 0.5, so there's a very faint outline around the blue there. And usually if you don't tell what color to use for the stroke, the pen, the computer picks black for you. Then I have another element called the polyline, and the polyline is just a bunch of points that are connected by line segments. So I started at the point 070, and then I went over to the point 3090, and then up to the point 4080. So it just traces line segments through the points that I gave it here. Different than a polygon, because a polyline doesn't close and fill in, but a polygon gets filled in. So two different kinds of things we do when we're drawing stuff. So what I'd like you to do for this one right here is I would like you to come up with a design using at least 3 of these elements here. So I would recommend using a circle, a rectangle, and a polygon, or a circle and a couple of polygons. Don't do any text. You can do a polyline if you want. And to do that, what I want you to do is go back to the graphic design, the Getting Started guide. And again, here's another sample of something I could draw, and I used 1, 2, 3, 4 elements on that one. I want you to just use 3 elements to get started. And so you're going to draw a design here, and then we're going to make the design. So I'll give a quick example of me drawing a design. So back to my notes. For here, I have a grid here that I can draw on. All right, so wish me luck. So let's see, let's draw in blue. So I like triangles, so I'm gonna make a triangle. So let's say I will start a triangle at 2020, and let's use a ruler to make straight lines, and then maybe I'll head down to that point there. So my triangle's gonna go there. And then let's go over here somewhere, maybe over to, where's that, 40, 150, and then I'll head back. So I'm going to try to make that triangle. So to do that, I just need to recognize where those 3 points are to make it happen. And I'll just copy the polygon element I have in that other one. And then let's suppose I want to draw a circle in here. Okay, I'm not the best circle drawer some days. Let's make that one red. Let's say my circle is going to sit like just hovering over the triangle like that. So then I have to estimate what's the center of the circle. So it looks like I'm centered around maybe here. So that would be 80, 90. So it looks like I'm at around 85 for the X value there. And 20, 30, 40, so it looks like around 35. And then the radius, well, it's not a perfect circle, so this way I'm going out, so these are 10 wide, so that would be 10, 20, 35 that way, 10, 20, 30 that way. All right, so to make it a circle, I guess I'm going to pick R equals 30. So then it'll be slightly not quite as wide as I made it. Let's see, 10, 20, 30. Oh, that's 35 that way. Oh, maybe I should go with 35. All right. I think I like 35 better. I'll make it and see what happens. So the triangle is pretty easy because I can identify the points. And then let's see, put one more element in here. Let's say we're going to add a rectangle, and I think I want the rectangle to kind of overlap the triangle. So I'm going to come maybe down like this and over and up and back. And let's highlight that to make it a little more visible. And my cat is demanding my attention. So I'm going to try to make this rectangle here. And so to make that happen, I just have to identify what all those points are. Okay, so that's the geometric sketch I'm going to try and make. Not my best design, but not too bad either. All right, so some important points I have there. So again, you should be drawing this on paper, and then you're going to try to enter it into the computer. So actually, I'm just going to move that out of the way so I can see my paper down on my other screen. And then I'm going to go over here. So remember earlier, I did a fork on the original one. And so now instead of belonging to Coach Parker, it belongs to Gary Parker. So you should have chosen fork from my basic shape, basic simple SVG here after you made your CodePen account, or you could have opened it and then made a CodePen account, but then you still got to choose fork to make it your own. So what do I want to keep? I want to keep the circle, but I want it to be my circle, and my circle I said was going to have an X center of 85 and a Y center of 35, and it's going to update as I type stuff in. And then I wanted a radius of 35. And then let's see, I drew mine in red. And then do I want fill? Let's see, I got a stroke that's red. Let's go with a different fill. Instead of orange, what goes good with red? How about like light blue? Is that a color? It is, cool. So that's another thing, named colors. So colors is an interesting thing. I'll talk about that more in the basic shapes, but down below here, I have some other resources, and I have a list of named colors that computers know about. So if you scroll down here, this is a link to all the named colors that computers in the world know. So you can pretty much guarantee that regardless of whether you look at this image on a computer in the US or England or France, it's going to recognize these colors. that name will give you that color over there. So you can look through this if you want to pick some names, colors. Otherwise, picking colors is a little more complicated, and I'll show that in another video. All right, so let's see, where are we? So I got that circle there, and let's see, let's do the triangle. So my triangle had points of, so that'd be the polygon here. I picked 20, 20 for my first point, and then I picked 80, 90, it looks like. So I'm just going to replace the values here with the ones on my sketch. And then my last point was x is 150, y is 40. And I did mine in blue. Okay, that looks pretty close. And then I'm going to get, do I want to get rid of the color? I'm just going to pick a different color, spring green. Let's do some kind of light yellow. How about khaki maybe? Or, oh, light goldenrod yellow. There we go. Let's copy that color and stick it in. When you do replace things in here, you gotta be careful not to accidentally delete any of the quotes or any of these slash greater than symbols, because that tells the computer when to start and end a color or start and end an object. And if any of that gets messed up, then the drawing gets messed up. I don't want the text. I'm just going to get rid of that whole line. I don't want the polyline, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And we need the closing SVG tag here to indicate stop drawing. We're done drawing. And if you try to put something outside of that, it's not going to do it because it's stopped drawing. All right, so last thing I drew is my rectangle. And I'll leave it there for now and just change. Let's say I wanted it to have the same starting point as the triangle. So that started at 20, 20. And then my picture has a width, right? So I'm going off my picture here. My picture has a width of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and a height of, looks like 70. So 60 and 70. Let's just put that over there for a moment. So rect width is going to be 60, and the height is going to be 70. Wait for a minute, and it'll redraw it. Okay, cool. Now, let's see, how did I do? So that is down here, my version. Now, if you want this to be bigger, you could do something like zoom in on the screen. So Control plus will zoom in and blow things up on the screen. I'm going to put it back to where it was, reset. The other thing I could do to make it bigger is I could adjust in the code the width and the height. So here I have a width of 340 and 220. You want to adjust them together. So for example, you can't just like add 10 to each. That will screw up the design. You could double each. So I could make it twice as big. So if I double 340, that would give me 680. So it's got to be proportional. If I double 220, that would be 440. And then the image will appear twice as big on the screen. Cool. All right. All right, so that kind of resembles this right here. Now, again, this one has no fills in it, so we could get rid of the fills if we want. And usually what I do there to get rid of fill is replace fill with transparent, or I think none works too. Let's see. No, didn't like none. All right, so it's got to be transparent. Let's try that. Come on, reset. Oh, I'm doing the wrong rectangle. That is the background rectangle I'm messing with there. Let's do the circle. I think none should work, N-O-N-E. There we go. Yeah. So if I set each of those to be filled with nothing, then it'll look more like my sketch over there, but optionally you could fill them with colors. And then the polygon. Let's add an outline of green over there. So let's do green. So that is the stroke. And there's a bunch of different greens you could choose from. Oh, wrong one. I wanted the rectangle to be green. Let's undo that. Indigo. Oh, indigo's nice too, but so many colors, so little time. All right, now I'm going to put the fills back in for a second because I just want to demonstrate one more thing. The order that they appear is the order they're placed on the screen, which means they're layered. So if I put a fill back on, say, the rectangle, like, let's throw in a light blue there. Okay. And then if I go to the polygon, which is the triangle, and put in that goldenrod color again, you can see that the triangle is covering up the rectangle. If you wanted the rectangle on top, then you would have to draw the rectangle after the triangle because they appear in layers in the order they're on the screen. So the last thing is on top. So I could cut that out of there and paste it here. It has to be within that closing SVG tag in order for that to work. Okay, so now you can see that the rectangle is on top. Now the rectangle has an extra twist. I have an opacity parameter here, and I set the opacity to be 0.7, which means it's 70% see-through. So if I put like a 0.9 there, it'll be 90% see-through, which won't be quite as see-through. And if I change that to a 1, then it's going to be not see-through at all. And if I make it like a 0, it's totally see-through and there's no more color. It's just gone. So 0.5 opacity, 50% see-through. And so notice that also affects the stroke as well as the fill there. So there's lots of things you can play around with in terms of seeing through things or not seeing through things. Opaque means you can't see through it. So 1 for opaque means it's opaque. 0 means it's disappeared. Okay. So that could be my design there. So again, point here is just get an idea about how graphics exist in the world today. So every poster you see, every logo on a piece of clothing, every cool design you see on a web page, if it's not a photograph, it was probably an SVG. Typically, we use programs to do all these, crazy codes in the background, but here we're just going to use our basic geometry to make it happen. All right, how do you share this with me? Well, you should save your work. So there's a save up there. After you save, it enables autosave so that as you work, it saves as you go. Once it's saved, then on the bottom right, down here, next to fork is share, and you can just copy the link. And eventually, when you submit this, you're going to submit a link for your CodePen for this one. You'll submit a link for a CodePen for the second and the third and the fourth. So we're not quite ready to submit. The other thing is the first one and the last one are based on a sketch. So I also want you to draw a sketch on paper, take a picture of your sketch, and upload that. So you'll have 2 photos to upload, and you'll have 4 CodePens to upload. So I'm going to come back with another video about basic shapes, and then the pie chart, and then my new design based on some things I learned in Chapter 11.